Hey, okay, good morning. It's an honor to be able to present this presentation to you. And I'm going to be on your screen is a copy of a book that was printed right after my QST article back in 1990, where the article in QST, a two-part human interest story, they didn't usually publish hardly any human interest, mostly technical emergency. But that was one of the first human interests, and it even got split into two, three-page articles in 1990. In that article, a sidebar from Paul AA2AV, who was also in Vietnam, did some Mars phone patching, but didn't do it as a full-time job. But he was a prolific writer, and he asked that every Mars operator from any time, any war, whatever, write in, and he can put this book together, which has a listing of just about every active Mars operator that wrote in, what station, what time. Most of it was Vietnam, but there was some. I think Mars actually went all the way back to World War II and then Korea. Now, this story is not really about Mars and how that worked. It's more a story of how ham operators going into the service, especially in the Army, where there was not a regular Mars MOS, that was your military occupational specialty. There were no, Mars was catch as catch can for you to get into a Mars station, either at a U.S. fort or at an overseas base. And then we had the hams who were Mars operators, civilians, who handled, it seemed, the bulk of the phone patches, where a radio would be connected to a phone line and the calls would go through, and they were also one way. They were not duplex. You had to say the word over because an operator on each end had to flip a switch to direct the direction of the call, and you could not interrupt each other, things like this. So it was a little awkward, but people got used to it. So let me see if I can get this rolling, and I'll play a little audio at first just to make sure my audio system is working here. Okay, let me advance to next slide here. It's 19. Oh, by the way, every slide you see has something to do with the presentation. It might seem a little odd. Why is he showing that? But each slide will actually present itself. 1964, I'm in high school. I just have my general back in northern New Jersey. I've got a nice station that was donated to me from a friend of my father in the Civil Air Patrols, Hammerlin HQ 160 receiver in a Johnson Ranger. I don't have a lot of money. I have a paper route or a shoe shine boy on the boulevard. And the cheapest antenna you can build, which is going to play a major part in this presentation, is a cubicle quad. You basically take four wood or bamboo spreaders and you drape some wire around them and you put one or two elements. And for a few dollars, you could get bamboo poles from rug companies, which I had my uncle come out and said, "Hey, go get me 8 bamboo poles." And I got down to the local hardware store and got an insulator, some wire, and I forgot where somebody may have given me an old piece of coax. And voila, I have probably, this would be what your hex beams or spider beams are today. They're, though these are a lot cheaper to build. Um, and that was my first antenna, was a two element 10, 15, and 20 meter quad back in northern New Jersey. And this will be 1964-ish. I graduate high school and I go off to Tucson to the University of Arizona. And I don't do well. I kind of goofed off in high school. Wasn't not a very good high school. One of the blackboard jungle type high schools, fights in the cafeteria, fights on the campus, you name it. If you just attended class, you passed, and they got rid of you. Wasn't very good there. And anyway, I did just manage to get my SAT scores up and with a special summer course and get into the university. But after 3 semesters of floundering around, I wanted to be electronic engineer, but not doing well in physics, math, and chemistry. That did not work out. So I quit, and unfortunately, I went back to northern New Jersey. I worked for New Jersey Bell, which became very important later on as a phone installer. And back in September of 1967, I got my notice. I got drafted, and I got drafted into the Army. Actually, you could, by chance, in fact, when I was standing in a row, the sergeant or somebody came up and stuck a folder between a bunch of us and said, "You guys over there." Well, those guys happened to be drafted into the Marines, who had life obviously a little bit harder than the Army. So we go back to the mid 50s when I'm a kid. My hero, Dwight Eisenhower, obviously, since World War II. And you, and the one photo that stuck in my mind that was in Life or Look magazine, just burned into my memory, was Eisenhower reviewing the troops, the 101st Airborne Division, about to jump into Normandy. And back then, it seemed like every war movie worth watching, a guy had a screaming eagle on his shoulder. I mean, the 101st was sort of my SEALs Team 6 at that time. They were the heroes of the world. Obviously, all the other soldiers that went into Normandy, but they were highly profiled, and it just seemed like every movie, if you weren't in the 101st Airborne, it wasn't worth watching. And the 101st went all the way to Berchtesgaden, and there they are sitting at the Eagle's Nest. They got Hitler's compound, they got his car, they got his beer, and they're celebrating Hitler's dead, the war's over, and the 101st, especially this unit, the 506th, went all the way. So I do well in basic. My whole platoon gets radio operator school. I'm the only ham. Actually, there was a little Morse code test when they're checking you out for your IQ and everything. I thought that was cool. The letters I, N, and T were part of the test they give you. And the platoon gets a radio operator school. And if you do well in radio operator school, they send you down to Fort Gordon, Georgia, through radio teletype and encryption, crypto. And you would actually do you'd get a secret clearance and train with the Army Security Agency guys. And I'd known about Mars, hadn't participated, but I knew that that might be something to get involved with. But as I went to each fort for my training, I tried to get into the Mars station, and the forts I went to, the Mars program was almost shut down. And I had a chance in Georgia. Tried and went with the local club, and one of the fellows tried to get me into the Mars station there, and they said, "No, everyone's going to Vietnam." This is now beginning of 1968, and we had 200 guys in my training, and with the orders came, one guy got Italy and one guy got Germany. And of course, the guy that spoke fluent Italian, did they send him to Italy? No, they sent him to Germany. Anyway, I'm gonna hit another slide here. This was something that some of the older ops in your club might recognize this sound. Yeah, model 15s or 19 teletype machines. So we were trained as field, as opposed to being a cushy comm center teletype operators. We would operate out of these vans, and we would go out and we'd actually even set up our antennas. So here's your antenna kit. You have instructions, and hey, I was playing field day. Things were going pretty good. Playing ham radio in the Army. Well, 198 of us get orders, no specific units, to go to Vietnam, and they said you'll be assigned a unit when you get to Vietnam. So when we get to Vietnam, down not too far from Saigon in Long Binh, you go to 90th replacement. They call it the 90th repo depot. You're going to wait for your orders. It's going to take about a week to get your orders, and they start cutting orders. Everything is in alphabetical order. It's the military. So being with my name with a V in it, I'm at the end of the alphabet. Again, I'm thinking of Mars, and I call the local Mars station. Oh, let me back up a bit here. So, I mean, the phone patches could be as crude as actually sitting in the field next to a guy setting up a radio at times. So I just want to mention it because the Army just was not as organized like Air Force and Navy Mars. So I find a landline phone and I call up to the Mars station. This is the command and control Mars station in Vietnam. You can see that it's AB8 USA. Those calls are now ham calls, but back then, Alpha calls and November calls were not issued to hams. So Vietnam had calls beginning with AB8, AAA to Triple Z. And I call the Mars station. I say, hey, I'm here. I have no orders. Can you get me in? And they said, hey, sorry, if you would have to have told us you're coming, and it can take, up to a month sometimes, 2 to 4 weeks to get you in. And yeah, we could use you, but you'll be processed out before, we'll try. So I never did hear back. And do you know anybody, any high-ranking people? I said, no, I don't know anybody. What happens next? This story could have been scripted by Rod Serling.
Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
So I'm back at the 90th Replacement Battalion. We have a jokester with us that keeps running in. We've got our orders, we got our orders, and he didn't. He'd have a laundry list or something. So one day he comes into the barracks we're staying in and says, we've got our orders, and he's talking slowly. He looks like he's seen a ghost, and he didn't look like he was too happy. And it turns out that we are the last 15 of us of the 198 are going to go to the 101st Airborne, the the unit of my dreams, the guys I had the most admiration for. And I'm going like, wait a minute. And um, basically, they didn't need any more teletype operators at this time. So the Army had a good habit of they would guarantee you a school, but they would not guarantee you the job. And you were always basically an infantryman. And so here we were with orders for the 101st Airborne. My head is just spinning. Not only are we drafted, Shanghai, as I called it, into the 101st, we're going to the 506th Infantry. This is one of the most elite units of the 101st Airborne. Anybody watch Band of Brothers? This is the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment. D-Day, Operation Overlord, Market Garden, the Netherlands, Battle of the Bulge, Bastogne, where when the Germans came and asked them to surrender, McAuliffe, the general, just told them one word, nuts, like go to hell. And they went all the way to Berchtesgaden, as we saw in the previous photo. Featured in Easy Company Band of Brothers movie. In Saving Private Ryan is in the 506th. In Saints and Soldiers movie, Tom Clancy's novel Without Remorse. And later on, beginning computers, the games mostly the kids were playing, and of course now the adults and everybody plays, Call of Duty, Company of Heroes. Soldiers of the 506th are featured. So we kind of protest mightily that we do not have that kind of training. And they said, no problem. You're going to get your training right here in Vietnam, your combat training. And they send us nearby to near Bien Hoa, down there, Saigon and Long Binh. And we are now in the Screaming Eagles Replacement Training School. We get 2, 3 weeks of special combat training. There's our platoon sergeant, tearing us a new one, and we get training, special weapons training, setting up ambushes, claymores. Now, the 101st Airborne in Vietnam, Vietnam was not a war that you could secure landing zones. Is not a war you could jump into. So the 101st was now being assigned as air mobile, air assault. And you were going to jump, but you weren't going to jump out of an airplane. You'd be jumping out of a helicopter. I wrote a letter home to my parents after that training, and I said, I don't think I'm going to make it. I really didn't, my skills as a radio operator were great, but as a combat infantryman, I was at a great disadvantage. Next thing I know, so orders are being issued. They get to the last 15 of us to the 101st. The first 11 in the alphabet are sent up north towards the demilitarized zone, and they are online as combat infantrymen. And the other four of us get on an aircraft, and we notice that we're not up very long before we land, and we're in the middle of seems like nowhere at this landing zone, and we wind up. I think we took off from the Benoit area here, and we landed a landing zone Betty at Fontiette. We're halfway between Phan Rang. Here's the big military base at Cam Ranh Bay, and Vung Tau, which is actually the in-country R&R center. Now, I've drawn this circle. The reason I drew this circle, there are no friendly forces within there. We are 60 miles or more from any friendly forces. So when we had a problem and we had to get support from outside the area, you found out what a 60-second minute was. It could take 20 minutes to get an airstrike to come in if we couldn't take care of ourselves. We were definitely very isolated. Well, I thought, hey, good. We're bordering on the South China Sea. We're several hundred feet above sea level, and I said, well, we're not on the Cambodian border. That's good. And we got the South China Sea, so we're probably safe. But what we didn't know was that at night there was a fishing village 5 miles north of us called Fontiette. And Fontiette, by the way, happened to be the birthplace of Ho Chi Minh. I learned later on. Anyway, they would go out with hundreds of boats and they'd go fishing at night offshore. That was their main industry. And they would mortar and rocket us, and we weren't allowed to fire back unless we, knew who was firing at us. But after a while, they just set a certain distance, and they said any boat within that distance will be blown out of the water, and that kind of helped. But you would sneak in under no lights and rocket and mortar us every few nights there. So the base camp, the landing zone, you see buildings that are left here. They were left over from when the French were in Vietnam. This was a short strip, about 3,000 foot runway. So a lot of C-123s with jet assist takeoff and short takeoff and landing aircraft coming out, in and out. So basically, you had a runway, you had a road around it with the South China Sea on one end, and um, the units, about 1,000 soldiers stationed here, 500 of which were in the 101st Airborne, the rest other 500 helicopter assault companies and other support troops. You see these little black dots going around the periphery. Those were the bunkers. We didn't have any problem during the day. We were never attacked. We were up high enough we could see people coming for miles, but it seemed like the enemy had better control of the night. And that's when all the action would happen at the LZ. So these bunkers would all be manned. Okay, so the I said 11 of the 15 went up north as combat infantrymen. The other four were about to be assigned. The four of us were assigned to headquarters company of the 506th. And it's very interesting because they found out we could type. We were hoping to wind up as they call them, clerks and jerks, if you weren't actually out in the field running around with a rifle. And the one one of the fellows got assigned as the headquarters company clerk. Another got inside to the intelligence sergeant. The other one down in the tactical communications bunker, and they still hadn't figured out what to do with me, and I was getting very worried. So I took off one day. Every morning you would fall out uh, and go to your job assignments, and you would get your orders assigned that morning. And after a few days, I asked somebody, I said, "Hey, when would I get my actual assignment?" And they said, "Oh, it takes about a week." I said, "Well, what happens in between?" "Well, you're going to just be put on detail. You're going to go out and it's 90 degrees with 90% humidity, and you're going to be digging bunkers and filling sandbags and burning human excrement and very bad jobs." And I then made a decision that I I'm in this elite unit, the unit of my dreams, and that what is it I'm going to do for them and not get myself or someone else hurt, because, my talent is um, ham radio and communications. And so what I do is I literally go AWOL. I literally walk off one morning knowing that they're not going to come looking for me till the next morning when I verify that. And I go walking around the base camp, and I'm going to find a radio, hopefully at the base camp, that I can operate because this is the best I could do, to be all you can be, as they said in the Army, for this unit. That would maximize my skills. And I'm looking for radios, especially this one in 1967, 68. This is probably the best single sideband synthesized automatic antenna tuner radio, GRC 105 or 106, probably cost about $10,000 back then. You could multiply that up to today's days. And I did have some training on that. What I did not want to find was this radio because this radio wound up right here. And in an ambush out in the field, you had a life expectancy, an ambush gone bad, of about 5 to 7 seconds. I am not making that up. I did research this because you would be taken out. They knew exactly who you were. You were advertising with that antenna. The guy behind you next, the second lieutenant or the platoon sergeant, and usually the third guy is the medic going to help you. The three of you were in very high danger. So I go walking around the base camp looking for antennas. I follow the coaxes down into the buildings. I pop my head into these doorways and say, "Hey, anybody need a radio operator, a real radio operator?" By the way, you can see in the background a bunker. That's how close the enemy was to us. That was our line right there. Uh, and they would come up at night from the valley all night long and crawl up on us and attack us. We were overrun 3 times while I was there, where the enemy actually got through the bunkers and concertina wire and all. Anyway, so any antenna I see, I'm sticking my head in a bunker in a building. "Hey, do you need a radio operator? I don't care if it was homebrew." And finally, I see this compound with a chain link fence around it, and I wander in. The gate's open, even if it says no trespassing and all this security, high security. And I walk into this compound because I see this beautiful microwave dish. And I'm looking around and I look up and, hey, what do we have here? A cubicle quad antenna. And I know the Army didn't use those typically. And I'm saying, what is that doing there? And it's around a sandbag Connex shipping container. And anyway, I walk up to it. I don't see anybody around in the compound. I don't know where everybody is. And the next thing, I pop my head into the entranceway there, and I hear this sound. Anyway, hey, that's single sideband. I pop my head into, and what do I see? One of the most beautiful sights that a ham radio operator could see. The best equipment in the world. Remember, the Japanese were not in the market with rigs. This is Collins radio equipment in this bunker. I see a KWM-2A transceiver, I see a 3001 500-watt linear amplifier. I see a speaker. They usually have like a power supply speaker system built in. But what I see next, I just could not believe. I see this unit, control unit, and on the unit, I see the word phone patch. And my head is spinning. I'm saying, could this be? There's no Mars stations out in the middle of nowhere. So I walk out. I turn to my right. I see a little building built out of old ammo boxes and a tin roof, and I hear some music playing out of it. And I wander over and I stick my head in the doorway and then startle a couple of guys. Hey, what are you doing in here? And it happened to be U.S. Army Stratcom communications unit that ran this microwave site. And these guys were on their break and they were in there having a couple of sodas. And I said, "Hey, what's the story on the on this radio station next door?" To my amazement, one of the guys says, "Oh, if you want to call home, you come back at 3 p.m. and you get a hold of a specialist, a Yunker." I said, "Really?" So he says, "Yeah, Specialist Yunker, he has a regular assignment with Stratcom, microwave technician. He'll work from 5 or 6 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon, and then he's going to come and you can place a call home." I said, "Mars station?" They said, "Yeah, what do you know about that?" I says, "I've been looking for one." "All right, see the specialist." Anyway, I get a hold of come back at 3 o'clock and I meet up with Pat. Now Pat's running phone patches in there, and they didn't have a lot of phone lines around the base camp, so most of the soldiers had to come out to this bunker and stand next to Pat, and he would jam a microphone in their face. And of course, a lot of people pretty intimidated and no privacy. You're talking to your family, loved ones, friends, and anyway, for people who are mic shy, that wasn't a good thing. Anyway, next I find out um, this happened to be a scene from this is it's beginning of June of 1968. Well, back in February of 68 was the major Tet offensive, and right across the compound, across the road, was the ammo dump, which was blown up during the Tet offensive. And these rounds and all had all gone off and just pretty much blown the compound apart. All the tents there that the guys just sleeping were all blown apart, and the buildings were crushed like soda cans from the shells coming in. Anyway, I'm told by Pat, he says, "Hey, you need to go see, there's a civilian on the base camp. There's a couple of civilian contractors here. You go get a hold of Jack Winning like winning a game, WA6WDB. We call them wet dog biscuits." And he said, "I will go see what I could do. Jack knows most of the officers in your unit. Maybe somehow they can get you the assignment." So Jack goes and talk to my colonel, and my sergeant goes talk to my sergeant major. And I found out I got traded for a 30-day assignment for a bottle of Chivas Regal because the guy did like to tip his wrist with some little glasses in it. By the way, Jack, when the stuff hit the fan, this is Jack out on the range. Everybody is mans their arms, and Jack also had to fight alongside of us. So this is out Jack one day out on the range with a Thompson. Anyway, the next morning, um, I go over, get on the tarmac, and I'm called out. And my platoon sergeant is now found out what I did, that I had walked off, and he is thoroughly enraged. The last guy you want to tick off is your platoon sergeant. And he found out that I got this temporary 30-day assignment, that I went around him and promised he was going to get me reassigned at the end of that 30 days. And I was pretty sure I was going to wind up with a radio on my back out in the field. So I had my work cut out. First thing Jack says is, you call up the colonel and you make sure he can get through to his wife having to be stationed in the Presidio Army base in San Francisco area. And I made sure that the colonel could get home at any time, calling and all the rest of the brass. And somehow I managed to stay past that 30th day at the Mars station with my platoon sergeant really looking to do a job on me. So this is the setup for at whatever year this was um, taken. There's 42 Army Mars stations. There's 22 Navy Mars. There's 12 Air Force Mars stations. And you can see they're scattered around where most of the bases are, um, along the Cambodian border and then down around Saigon, the highest level of them, and then along the coastline. And the Army stations all AB8, triple A to triple Z. The Navy stations with N0 calls, and the Air Force had AAI calls. We were arranged into networks. We had the command and control station, AB8 USA, that I showed you the photo of earlier. And then you would spin off into nets of a net control station with anywhere from four to six other stations in it. I was part of net five. There were six Mars stations ultimately, but five when I was there. My station was Alpha Bravo 8, Alpha Yankee, Alpha Yo-Yo, we used to call it. And our net control station was at Vung Tau, which was the in-country R&R center. So that'll play into the story later. Um, we had frequencies assigned that were mostly on 20 and 15 meters above and below the amateur bands. Of course, you'd put the crystals in the Collins radios and you would use those frequencies. Now, you notice that some nets had more frequencies than others because they had a higher population soldier density, so they had to run more patches, so they got more allocations. We were being in the middle of nowhere, little station. I only had a few frequencies, and that's going to play into this of why we'd have to wait in line. You would run three phone patches, and then you'd wait, and another station would run. And anyway, sit on your hands, as they say. Um, this was the layout of where our stations were. I'm up to the furthest to the north at Fontiette. Down my net control here is at Vung Tau. Off the shore, we've got a U.S. Navy ship, the Corpus Christi Bay, with an Army contingent on it. It's a floating machine shop where they would fly out helicopter and aircraft engines and rebuild them. And they had a Mars station on board. The other three stations were down in the Mekong Delta at Kanto, Soc Trang, and Vin Loy. There was a problem though, where and you had to have your Mars station on the air, and you would check in every hour with net control, or they would threaten to take your Mars station away from you because obviously other people wanted these Mars stations to get set up, and there was no way we could keep the station on, every hour. So what happened is the net control guy knew of our plight and he would cover for us. These stations down here in the Delta, due to the frequency we were using to check in, could seldom hear me up here. But as long as net control could hear me, they didn't care. And the guy on the ship, Mars Station, he knew what was going on. So he would call our call sign out and then pretend like, oh yeah, got you checked in when I wasn't there because I had to sleep sometime. So that helped things out. Um, Now, serendipitously, look at the sunspot cycle during the Vietnam War from 64 to 73, and the best conditions, and it wasn't a great solar cycle, happened to be 1968, 69, the height of the war, and I was there from May of 68 to May of 69. So in my favor, I have the best radio conditions, better radio conditions, higher the numbers here, more phone patches. So some of the stations that ran my patches, uh, mostly civilian. This is Bob and Jane Purcell up in Yucca Valley, who happen to use a cubical quad antenna, and they're running their Collins. This is the W6 RGM, really good Martini, and his wife K6 RGM. Next in Tucson, Arizona, I ran a lot of patches with Carlotta. And Gerard. Gerard was from Paris originally. He was about 15 years old during World War II, and he fought with the French resistance. He was a uh, instructor at the University of Arizona, and I think Carlotta did clerical administrative work, but she was the radio operator for that station in Tucson. So I ran most of my phone patches with those two stations. So back to what did the Mars stations look like? And this was the command and control station down in Long Binh, not too far from Saigon. You went inside and beautiful air-conditioned building, wood panel walls, clocks telling you what time it was all over the world. We didn't have 220 volts AC, so we had the little Collins amplifier with 500 watts. These guys had the 30S1 2kW amps. Instead of the transceiver, they had the Collins S line. And the nice thing about that is, for those that remembered it, a lot of the early rigs did not have a thing called receiver incremental tuning. So, and with sideband, the voices weren't natural. And those that remember way back then, tuning in female voices, which a lot of my calls went to wives and mothers, it was very difficult, to get them to sound natural. And here's a poor guy trying to listen to his family, somebody sound like that, trying to understand them. So, you couldn't move your dial to tune them in because, yeah, it would everybody would detune. You didn't have this control. But with the Collins S line, you had a separate receiver, so you could stay locked on net frequency, and you could tune your receivers so they sounded. And Collins had the best audio, where especially a female voice sounded like a female voice. A lot of other rigs, female voices did not propagate very well over. Um, and this would have been a great station had I got into this station because guess what? They had teletype equipment, and and if you couldn't get a call through, you could send the Marsgram like a telegram. So here you see R390 teletype receivers, and of course your Model 15 or 19 or whatever the military nomenclature was for these teletype units. So Vung Tau, um, I locally this picture kind of resonates because it looks like a very plush area of San Diego called La Jolla. If you've ever been out here, and that's what Vung Tau looked out. It was the in-country R&R center, so if you managed to get some leave, you could go down there, lay on the beach with the Viet Cong and some of the NVA. When they put their swimsuits on, nobody knew who anybody was, and the joke was that the enemy was laying right on the beach with you, taking their vacation. You did catch as catch can. You needed an antenna that went on 20 meters. You took a 5-element 20-meter beam and you modified it. Probably this was a high gain 205 BA. You need a tower? Well, you got a tower. You got some scaffolding. You need a place to operate? Well, you get a trailer. You set up, protect yourself about incoming mortars. They had the luxury of building a small building outside the Mars station with this building, and they actually, because you're on a phone patch, and the phone patch, I mean the microphones and picking up headsets, the noise in the background. Well, nighttime mortars and rockets landing. Also, your artillery was firing, so there was always chances of explosions going off, and that was not comforting for a loud noise to go off in the middle of your phone patch. So these guys managed somehow to get some acoustical tiles and made a little waiting room and a little soundproof booth you can call from. They happen to have enough power, so they had air-conditioned room, mainly not for them, but for the equipment. And they did have a 2 kilowatt amplifier, which, of course, like I said, we did not have. And they actually could see they had the Collins remote VFO, which would help you not have unnatural sounding audio. You could tune the other station in to sound natural. One of the other Mars stations down in the Mekong Delta, apparently next door to them was an FM, Armed Forces Vietnam FM station. You can see that tower, but you can see the Mars station, and you can see the best antennas we had in Vietnam was this large log periodic antenna, was a high gain LP 1007. That will play into my story in a little bit. Anyway, just another one of the operators at one of the other Mars stations in our net. So one day when I went down to the net control station. I asked if I could get out to the ship and see the Mars station on the ship. Um, and luckily, because most of the aircraft going out were on official business and they're or bringing out parts to be machined and all this. Um, and by the way, the ship, their call sign was Alpha Bravo 8 Alpha Romeo, or Alpha Rowboat, as we call them, quite appropriate for being on the ship. And you can see they actually had a little QSL card made, and the guy that sent the card out was bragging that he only had 23 days left of his tour. Anyway, I managed to get on board a chopper. I had a special leadership training school after basic because I had 3 semesters of ROTC in my 3 semesters at college because the University of Arizona was a land grant institution. All male students were required to take 4 semesters of ROTC, whether you liked it or not, especially during the Vietnam War. And I happened to take 3 semesters of Air Force ROTC, even though they had Army. Anyway, because of that, I got some special leadership training with special weapons training beside what I had in country, and I did get qualified on an M60 machine gun, and that's what the chopper sported. And I happened to be able to. You could always get a ride as a door gunner if you were brave enough to take it. I figured, well, we're going out to the ship. I don't think we'll be attacked, so I think I'm okay. So I happened to get out on the ship. So they had that log periodic, very hard to see, at the top of their mast on the ship. And you can imagine with all that steel and sitting on salt water that they had quite a signal. The big problem they have is that the ship would rotate on its anchor and you constantly had to keep turning the antenna and not lose the station you're running the foam patches to, and they fade out. On the ship, um, they had their station set up, and they actually had some. I see an R390, so they could actually send some Marsgrams. In the foreground is Tim. He lives up in Orange County, California. It's WB6YCQ. We're still in touch with him, and we only tracked down one of the other operators, Rosie, up in the upper right, but we found out that he was Silent Key. At work one day, I'm talking to somebody, and Mars comes up, and boom! It turns out this fellow on the right happened to be at Alpha Bravo 8 Alpha Bravo up in Quinh Nhon, Vietnam, north of Cam Ranh Bay, where was a big Army hospital. That will play into the presentation here in a minute. So next, the audio recordings that you're about to hear of the actual foam patches were being run by Lenore Jensen, W6NAZ. She is Silent Key now. And she was running quite a few from San Fernando Valley, north of LA. Her husband was an audio engineer and recorded all these foam patches. And before she passed, she sent me little cassettes with foam patches, which I called these significant foam patches off of. Just asked me that I would remove the names of the soldiers in them, which I did, edited them. So I'm going to go ahead and play you one of the foam patches from the Vietnam War back in the late 60s, early 70s. That was being run by Lenore.
I wish I knew they change every day. One day they're brown, and the next day they're gray, and the next day they're blue, and so you don't know. They say that your eyes never take a definite color till they're almost a year old. Over.
She giving you much trouble, dear? Over.
Oh, not now that I'm getting used to her. At first I let her give me a bad time because every time she'd squeak a little bit, I'd run and pick her up and stay up with her and all kinds of things like that. But you know, have to learn everything the hard way. Oh, okay. She just started to squeak. I thought she was going to cry for you, but I guess not. Over.
Well, I can wait another 100 days. I'll be home pretty soon. So you two be good now. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you real soon. Love you very much. Over.
Okay, don't worry. We'll be all right. And you take care of yourself and come home real soon. Hey, you going to cry? Go ahead. Cry. Come on. Did you hear her? Over.
Yes, I did, dear. It sounds real nice. Over.
So he hears the first cries of his newborn over a Mars radio foam patch. Okay, so next we have to move the Mars station out of the secure uh, compound because I'm making things better and I'm running so many foam patches, and now they can't have people walking over into this compound because remember, we didn't have a lot of phone lines around the base camp. Maybe there was certain headquarters buildings and all. So a lot of the traffic had to walk into the Mars station, and they asked if we would move the Mars station out of the compound. So across the road, actually where the old ammo dump was, we get a piece of land, and Jack finds me a 60-foot utility pole, and happened to capture a picture one day of hoisting the cubicle quad antenna up to the top of the mast there. By the way, I'm digging holes in the ground to set these poles, and I'm hitting metal things at the old ammo dump. And I was told, "Oh no, it's all been the EOD team and everybody's defused. Don't worry." It's me. Don't worry. I don't know what I'm hitting and what's going to happen the first time I transmit too. You remember in the old days, you drive around and no radio transmitters. They tell you to turn your CB off when you're in your car. So anyway, with a brave pole climber attaching the brackets we need to take this, and occasionally we could have a sniper brave enough to come on us at daytime. But anyway, brave guy, and we get the quad hoisted up on a little pulley. It wasn't that heavy and all, and he's attaching our fancy rotor system is this line. We just pulled the antenna around on it with a piece of rope to the Mars stations. We ran most of our Mars state calls to either to Arizona or California or to seemed like northern New York. General Dynamics or somebody had a station, so it was either going east or west to run my patches. Okay, so we need a building, and Jack um, somehow gets a hold of a temporary. We're not allowed to have a regular building because it's not an official Army. Um, what is want to say property or something. More to come on this. So Jack gets this canvas Jamesway Quonset hut, and we got the station moved. And now in the background, to the right of the sandbags, you'll see a gray area. That's a cement pad that got poured for a building that we were not going to probably allow to be put up. More on that. And you do it what you can with material you got. So we needed privacy. So what better thing to have privacy than the old bathroom door from the old compound across the street where the buildings got all blown up. I also go to each unit and I say, I got to get another radio operator because I got to keep this station on the air. Even though we had most of our phone patches from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. Vietnam time, we still needed somebody to keep the station. So finally, I went to a National Guard unit that got sent over there from Idaho, and very nice captain agreed to give me one of his combat engineers, which turned out again to play into this story, named Mel Ure. He was not a ham, but I trained him to be run phone patches, but his skills will come in handy soon. So this is our first setup here. You'll notice I have beautiful air conditioning. I've got 3x5 file cards set up so people can have the phone numbers of their family and friends on file. I've got some nice 7.62 millimeter card holders, and I'd line up the calls. And you'll notice we always kept a repair manual for the equipment. We're very close by. Okay, so I'm going to run you another phone patch here. And I think this is one done at Christmas time.
Hello. Yes, I have a quick call for anyone from in Vietnam. Will you accept the charge? Yes, I will. Thank you. Go ahead. Hello, I'm an amateur radio operator in California. Have you ever talked to the captain by amateur radio from Vietnam? And you've done this before. Remember, we have to say over. Okay. Go ahead, Captain.
Hello, Charlie. Can you hear me all right, over?
Yes, Larry, I can reach you loud and clear. Over.
Roger. I just wanted to call up, honey, and wish you a very Merry Christmas and tell you that I'll be with you next come Monday, over.
And the kids are right here, so I'll let them say hello before I say over, all right? Hello. Hello, Daddy. Merry Christmas. Oh. Hi. Merry Christmas. Over.
Merry Christmas to all you, honey. I love you very much. Over.
So even the dog got a Merry Christmas in. That was kind of neat hearing all his kids on there. Okay, so yeah, there's a war going on. And just like the cat brings in his catch and leaves it on your doorstep, when the enemy caches were captured, the 101st would take and display all the items that were about to be used against us. So you can see bazookas, Chinese communist machine guns, improvised explosive devices made out of old, I think, cooking oil cans or wherever they got them. Little bolt wire cutters so they could cut through our perimeter concertina wire when they were sneaking up on us at night. And this is what it would look like during every few days a nightly attack. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's pure pitch dark, and this is what it's lit up. These are parachute flares being sent up and lit up just like daytime. During an attack, of course, we had our helicopters. The best one we had was the AH-1 Cobra, and you did not want to be on the receiving end of one of these when he got off the ground with 24 rockets, 4,000 rounds a minute, machine guns, and grenade launchers. So during one attack one night, I am on top of the bunker next to the Mars station, kind of keeping an eye on things. Normally I'd be in the bunker, but the problem was with a bunker. In a previous attack, the enemy overran us and got in, and they were running around, and they threw a satchel charge in one of the bunkers where my friends were. Satchel charge looked like a briefcase, small suitcase that had a charge on it. Toss it in, boom. Well, one landed at their feet one night. They had their lives flash in front of them. Luckily, it did not go off. After I heard that story, and because of the very limited visibility of being inside these bunkers, I decided I would be on top of my bunker and only have to worry about if a round came in and landed on the top of the bunker, because if it landed around it, we had sandbags. And anyway, you did crazy things, and everybody had a camera, and I thought maybe we had things under control that night, but I was going to be prepared. I had my weapon, I had my camera, and I said, well, while I'm waiting, I'll take some photos. Now, this is a photo. The horizontal red line is the helicopter running lights flying by. The big bright light are parachute flares that are floating down to the ground, lighting up the perimeter. The white splotches are when the helicopter would fire a rocket, and then the white streaks with the tracer rounds going down to the ground, you can see in the background. And I'm taking photos, and it's getting more and more heated, more and more heated. To finally, it was just incredible. There wasn't much left of whatever was out there the next morning. I did not want to be on the cleanup detail. So if we had a really bad problem and we couldn't take care of it with our helicopters, we would call in for a Puff the Magic Dragon, an AC-47 from took about at least 20 minutes to get there. And in one of these attacks, you learned what a 60-second minute was. 20 minutes was a lifetime. He would come down. He had 3 of these 4,000 round per minute miniguns sticking out the side. He would hover overhead, and it would just rain down bullets. This is what it looked like one night during an attack. So I wanted to get, people had movie cameras back then, and I said, boy, if I could only get a video of this. And I've been looking online for years to see if somebody had a video of one of the attacks. I couldn't find one from Vietnam, but I have a similar one which showed what it would have sounded like and what it would have looked like during one of these attacks. And let's see if I can get it to play here. Anyway, that's pretty much what went on. So, and usually either after one of those attacks or during a field operation, we have injured. And I'm going to play you a phone patch um, to a soldier calling his mom through the Army hospital at Quin Yon. They know he's been wounded, um, and he's getting a call home from the hospital. Now, I'm surprised I have this tape because we were not supposed to put any phone patches on the air talking about wounds or KIA or anything like that. So I don't know how Lenore wound up with this tape, but I got a hold of it. Um, and anyway, like I said, the mother knows that he's wounded in the hospital, and he's going to call home and talk to his mom there. Uh-oh.
Hello?
There it is.
Hello? Oh, that's fine. Have you talked before by radio to Bill in Vietnam? No, I haven't. Well, he's going to speak to you now from Key Non. Did you know he was in the hospital? Yes. All right. No. No. Oh, I'm so glad to talk to him. Yes, I know. Well, now, cry now before he gets on the phone. So you know. I'll try to wait it's over. Yeah, don't cry. You know, talk loud and very positive and make him happy. All right.
Hello, Mother. Myself, I'm in this hospital here. Got to talk to you a little bit about something that's fixing to happen to me here. And thought I'd let you know, and they said they'd do their best to get a hold of you. Over.
Well, how are you feeling? Over.
They got me messed up the last firefight I had, so I thought I'd call you and let you know. Over.
Well, how's your arm? Over.
Well, they're going to have to amputate it. Over.
Do you know what time, when you'll be home? Over.
No, they don't, not really. As soon as I can get a new arm put on, I guess, at another hospital in a couple months, maybe. Over.
Oh, we're all doing fine here, Billy. And everybody sends their love. Over.
Well, I send my love. Over.
I got your letter today where you said you were coming home. Over.
Well, I may not look like I did when I left there, but I'll be home, though. Over.
I want you home, Billy, anyway, honey. I love you, and that's the way I want you home. Over.
Okay, I'll keep going, pressing on.
Bill, well, I want you to remember now that we're all behind you. Over.
Well, I guess I'd better say bye-bye for now and give you all my love, so I guess that's it. Over.
Bye-bye, darling, and we love you. Over.
Bye-bye. Over.
Nelson, you did very well. I know that meant a lot to him. All right, now, bye. Bye.
So she held up pretty well to the end of that phone patch. Okay, so after one of these semi-weekly attacks, you'll notice there's something missing on the top of my pole. That's what's left of my cubicle quad after pretty much the antenna got blown off the top. And now I'm in trouble because I have no antenna. What I need is one of these, the high gain LP1007. And I find out there's some of them located down near Saigon. But you can't just like pick up a phone and say, send one. They said, come get it. And that was very tough to just because it wasn't, again, the Mars was not officially part of the Army material stuff being shipped around. So I find out this thing is in a crate. It's like 300 pounds. It's this huge crate. And how am I going to get this from 90 miles away? So I started going out to the runway every day, and any aircraft that lands, I say, hey, can you go down and get this? No, we're only carrying ammo, food, troops, not authorized. I'll get in trouble. Every aircraft that come down, I go talk to the pilots. Hey, where you going? You going to be near this place? Can you pick one up? Finally, Jack finds one of the choppers on the base camp and has an idea. Maybe we could lash this thing underneath or something. And so we get a captain, or warrant officer, and he says, "Okay, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go down and try and get this thing for you. But you, since it's unauthorized, you be ready. I'm going to fly. I'm going to get this thing off the chopper. I don't want to get caught transporting illegal cargo." He says, "So you be on the radio and ready with a crew to get this thing unloaded." So I'm listening the day that he's bringing it, and he calls in and he says, "Do you see me?" And in the distance, I see this aircraft, with wings. And I said, "No, I don't see you." He says, "Yeah, that's me." I said, "No, I see a fixed wing aircraft." He said, "That's me." I said, "Really?" And that's how he transported it right through the helicopter. So I managed to get my first one, and he actually went back and got me a second one. So I'm putting this together. I'm cursing at all the missing parts and ill-fitting parts at high gain. And we finally get this, but we have a problem. We don't have a way of getting this 300-pound antenna up on this 60-foot pole. So Jack goes back and gets a uh, hydraulic lift, but it only can go up about 35 feet or something. So we go, well, we'll get one antenna up, worry about the other later. And I get one of the antennas up, and then I build the second antenna, and Jack lines up a helicopter to try and put it up. And they said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." Again, totally unauthorized. Got to make this happen quick. Do it on a day when there's like, there were actually less quieter days on a Sunday for some reason. Maybe the enemy went to church or something. I don't know. But anyway, the pilot said, "Look, uh, find the center balance point when I lift this thing. If that antenna tilts up and starts coming towards my rotor blades, I'm going to drop it. That's the end of your antenna." He says, "Be here at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning." Anyway, I'm laying in my bunk because I would work my foam patches till 3 in the morning. I would probably stay up till daylight because it wasn't really safe to go to sleep with the enemy possibly coming in. And so I would be getting up, and I'm laying there. It's about 8 a.m., starting to stir, and I hear this helicopter hovering above me very loud. And I said, "What is going on?" And I run outside. Well, they came an hour early and they decided they didn't need to look for me. They didn't need me to put it up. And I ran out, and this is what I saw. I just happened to ran back in the tent, grabbed my camera, just pointed it, didn't focus it, just pointed the camera and took a shot just as he dropped the antenna off into the special bracket that this brave pole climber made. And now we had our second antenna up at 60 feet. And being right on, shooting northeast right over the South China Sea on this bluff, we had, even with only 500 watts, one of the most powerful signals coming out of Vietnam at that time. I'll play you another phone patch here.
Over. We're fine, Jimmy. We're fine. Lorraine's at Say's and Ricky's right now, but I'm so glad you're coming home. Over, talk to me. I am happy. I'm real happy. Over.
Okay, Bernice, I have to get off the air now, so I'll see you the 16th of this month. Over.
Way over. Goodbye. I love you. Over.
Okay, so next, Jack's going to help us get a building. And the problem was, you guys think you have problem with CC&Rs and HOAs? We had a second lieutenant running around who was the post engineering officer that made sure nothing was built on the base camp that was over 1 foot high that was not authorized. And Jack says, "Don't worry about it. I got a plan." Now there was material that came in. The material would come in on a ship, and they would be left down on the beach. And Jack said, "Here's what's going to happen. The material is not inventoried until it's brought up from the beach onto that marshaling area. So it's nobody's material till it's inventoried. So you call up your guys in 101st and you tell them not to light us up. That's us. We're going to do a midnight requisition for the lumber and make sure they know it's us down there, not the enemy." And the enemy would come at night and attack, by the way, from boats on the beach. They would crawl up the side of the hills and all this. So anyway, now here's the plan. You find out that the post engineering officer leaves once every week or two to go on other business in another camp. Jack says, "Here's what we're going to do." With the help of Mel, my radio operator, standing back here in the background with the hat on, we're going to prefabricate nothing over 1 foot high. So, of course, during the time, the lieutenant is driving by in his Jeep and he sees this. "What are you guys doing?" "Well, we're building." "You can't." "Well, yes, it's not over 1 foot high, sir. You will not put up a building." "No, we're building something." So, anyway, when the lieutenant left, Jack says, "We're putting up the building." I says, "Okay, Jack, I hope you got a good plan." So in a couple of days, the combat engineers, can do like the Seabees. They put us a Mars station building. Got the old insulation from the across the road where the other buildings were crushed. That they put new buildings up. That helped keep some of the heat out. Got some masonite, and voila, we have a building. Lieutenant comes by. He's fit to be tied. He says, "That's it. I'm coming by with a bulldozer soon." Okay, so I called Jack. Jack gets a hold of the colonel. Colonel gets a hold of these guys. 101st Airborne Rangers, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol guys. The toughest guys you want to meet. They have a little discussion with the lieutenant about the building. These guys like to call home. And so they made you're in an Asia environment, culture, and you make a peace offering to the lieutenant. They also made one last offering and said, if that doesn't work, the next thing you'll know is you'll find out about a pineapple. How's that? We did not hear back from the lieutenant. End of story. So here's the Mars station. You walk in, you have a little waiting area. Notice our air conditioner over here on the left. Walk up to the little window, put in your order, and you get a nice private calling booth. I engineered, got a 500 desk set with a battery and made it so they were not having a microphone shoved in their face, and they actually had a little telephone hookup and a little privacy and quiet at night, especially if there were rounds going off. Mel did a great job, built a beautiful station console for the main station. We had a little work area, a little workroom, little Heathkit Mohegan shortwave receiver. We had a second station which we could put on the air if we had propagation on 2 bands. So now, Old Pueblo, what does that have to do with this? Well, when I went to Tucson in 1965, a couple of years before I got drafted, the first thing you do as a ham, you're in a new town, you go to the radio club. So I go to the Old Pueblo Radio Club, and I make friends with me, and I'm 18, this fellow's 16 years old. We become best friends. He invites me over to his house in Tucson so I could talk home on phone patches. Well, turns out later on, who is this guy? And how does he play a part in this? You're going to find out. Anybody heard of the comedian Gary Shandling? He passed away about 10 years ago, unfortunately. Anyway, that was Gary Shandling, became my best friend in college. Anyway, Gary would get on the radio and run phone patches, even though they were unauthorized. They would not give him permission to run because he couldn't stay on the air 4 to 6 hours a day. He only had a couple hours a day. He was going to school, either at a high school or, no, at that time, he'd graduated attending the University of Arizona. So we also were running phone patches. We didn't have enough frequencies where five of our stations could all run phone patches at the same time. So we decided we would find a clear 15 or 20 meter frequency and go off and listen to it for a few weeks. And if we heard nothing on the frequency, we decided to run phone patches on it. And uh, and for me, I told Gary, just come on the frequency. We would stand by just before 3 p.m. in the afternoons, and we would go CQ CONUS, Continental United States. Anybody hear me? And I would be one of the first stations because I was the most powerful antennas to pick up. And I would say, Gary, when you hear me, just say the word move, code word or something, and we move off on some frequency off the net control station frequency and run phone patches. And then one of our other stations caught on and they were doing it. Well, it turned out we got caught. And not only were we on an authorized frequency, we were on a 15-meter backup frequency for the Apollo mission, which was going to go to the moon in 1 year. And here's this aircraft carrier, probably the Ticonderoga, out there practicing to pick up the astronauts and listening to us running phone patches. And the most interesting thing is this is an inside joke for you old timers. Look on the tail of the chopper. You knew you're on the wrong frequency because it says up. For those that have run split frequency D expeditions and all, remember somebody yelling up, up, you're on the wrong frequency. Anyway, we got called on the carpet, and well, literally, they were anything else, they were going to pull our licenses. Meanwhile, Gary Shandling, his parents, and they're listening to him running these phone patches and all, and they said, "Hey, we'd like to send you guys some Christmas packages." I said, "What?" I said, "There's 1,000 guys here." They said, "Yeah." So just out of the generosity and the kindness of their heart, his parents gathered up uh, and they got on the local radio station asking for, and this is like in August or September of the year. They knew it'd take a while to get these packages shipped over there, and they got the packages delivered around town, and the fraternities or sororities would package them up, and they snuck the packages out to the Davis Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson and put so many packages at a time. So we finally got 1,000 packages sent over, and they were advertising this on one of the main rock stations in Tucson at the time. So there's an article in the newspaper about where to take the packages and the radio station being involved in it. So that Christmas of 1968, we got these packages out into the field to the 101st guys. And Christmas is where you pretty much make it. And we got a Santa Claus to dress up and go out and bring the packages out. And here they are. Tell them these are a lot better than those sea rations off to the side. There was a lot of good food items that could stay preserved there. And my friend, one of the three guys I ship with, Jerry Stabale from Chicago, is on Santa's lap talking to him about what he wanted for Christmas, which I think was a trip down to one of the massage parlors in town, but it was denied. And just to make sure nobody was left out, we had a little gift for the enemy hit with great impact. By the way, there was a nice certificate issued from our unit. We all got a nice service certificate with the 101st here, and we had one made out and sent off to Gary's parents. So I'm back from Vietnam, and I'm back in Tucson. I'm gonna go back to school, and Gary and I are back in his shack. Now we're trying to run phone patches. They still won't authorize us to run them because both of us are busy in school. He's about to finish. I'm restarting, and so that that just that was the end of that. So I move up to Tempe, Arizona, to go to finish my degree at Arizona State, and I find out about Barry Goldwater's Mars Station. One of the teachers is one of the volunteer operators. Anyway, here's Mike Wallace, kind of an early version of 60 Minutes, doing a special on Goldwater's Air Force Mars operation. And I wind up getting involved from 1971 to 74 with Barry Goldwater's Air Force Mars volunteers. We had about 30 operators that kept the station manned from 6 a.m. to midnight, 18 hours a day, and and we had quite a station here. This was a 80-foot tower with a Collins log periodic. You can see the boom as the tower itself. This thing, I forget how it was, like 50 or 60 foot long boom. Collins $10,000 log periodic that he paid for out of his pocket. Then he had his normal 120-foot rotating tower. Now, the antenna we use in Vietnam is at the bottom of his tower. That's our log periodic. That thing is 30 foot long and 300 pounds. Look what he has above it. He's got 40, 80 meter beams up above it. Huge antennas. Anyway, he had the station off his pool. He had a three-suite cabanas, and we used one of them for the Mars station. The others were used for guests. In fact, one night I came up the driveway to pull my shift. It was middle of the day because I was pulling the noon to 6 shift. And as I came up, there's a guy in a trench coat with the sunglasses, and I go, damn, that doesn't look like Secret Service. And it was. And all the Republican governors were coming out that day to visit Goldwater and have some little meeting at his QTH there. Anyway, they stuck a little metal pin on my lapel. They asked me what I did, who I was, identified me, and don't go anywhere you don't normally walk around this compound, and pretty much told me, yeah, be careful here. Anyway, this was Goldwater Station, beautiful, where you could walk behind a wall built by the volunteers. The blue unit in the center was a 5,000 watt amplifier that he had borrowed from the Air Force, and we had two Collins S lines set up. So I'll play you last audio, some medley of patches here. As I was running patches from Goldwater. We ran patches from to the end of the war, which was 73, and then in 73 to 74, there was no longer Vietnam, and we ran patches out to the Pacific, to the Air Force bases.
What you been doing? Tell me what you've been doing. Over.
Just doing my job and getting fit. The end of this month, I count double-digit visit, 90 days. Over.
I love you, sweetheart. Everyone here says hi. Your mom and dad say hi. Over.
I love you too, and I hope everything's fine. 29 days is all that's left.
Sounds so great to hear your voice. How have you been? Over.
I've been fine. I've been real good. Happy anniversary, darling. I'll be home in 29 days. That's all I can think about. I'm going crazy around here. Over.
Now, don't go getting into any trouble when you have such a short time left. Over.
I won't get in any trouble. I won't. I promise. I just gotta keep a cool head. Just lay low. Over.
Oh, it's so great to hear your voice, and you sound wonderful. Just wonderful. Over.
You need me to come home soon. Over.
What'd you say? Over.
You need me to come home soon. Over.
Do I want you to come home? Over.
Yes. Over.
Yes. Over.
Be home in about 20 days. Over.
What? What'd you say? Over.
I said I'd be home in about 20 days. Over.
Why? Are you kidding me? Over.
Okay. I love you. Over.
But I'm very worried about you. And I'm very scared. Over.
Okay. Now don't worry about me.
I love you, and please be careful. Over. Yes, everything is fine. And you know what? You're coming home next month. How does it sound? Over.
Oh man, that is just beautiful. I'm ready to come home.
We're just waiting for your return. Okay? Over.
I miss you. I love you. I still be home in 58 days. Over.
Okay, we'll see you in 58 days. I love you too. And so long. From California. Bye. Thank you.
Okay, so we're just about done here. A couple of slides. go up to a reunion in 2013. First one I attended with my unit up in Indianapolis, and there's Pat Yunker, the guy that got me the job, and he lives in Indiana. So we're up in Indianapolis, and he was in the southern part of the state, so we invited him to come up, and the 101st was glad to welcome him because he was instrumental in us getting our phone patches. This was my colonel. He attended. He was still going, late 80s, early 90s there. And I got to thank him again personally for giving me a little bit safer job. And here he is. And we had him present one of the honorary service certificates to Pat Yunkers. So that was kind of a great culmination because Pat was instrumental in initially getting that Mars station set up. Jack Winning, the civilian WA6WDB had passed a year or so before, and the family was given a certificate posthumously for his helping the 506th. This is Gary Shanling back a few months before he passed away in 2016 at his station up in Brentwood. That Heathkit amplifier me and he bought back in the late 60s. Got it sent down from on a Greyhound bus from Phoenix, and it was still going and still working. The original tubes, and over to the right he's got a Collins KWM 380, and over to the left a couple of Kenwood rigs. He had let his license lapse, and I was trying to get him to renew it at that time. But a few months later he had a health event, and at 66 years young he passed away. I want to dedicate this presentation to Jack and up above in the brown shirt and Gary below, and also to the men of the 506th. We were decimated. We lost about 36 men killed and dozens wounded during that year. And during their tour in Vietnam, I think we lost about 400 members. So, right there, as it says, that is a pallet of 80 cases of Miller High Life beer. It's Miller time. Any questions?
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions for Dennis?
Is Mars still active, or is it worthwhile to go look in, come in Mars station?
From what I heard, they got sort of put together with FEMA. Yes, they're still around. Of course, with the proliferation of communications and cell phones, I don't think they're running phone patches, but they are kind of tied in, yes, for emergency communications, and I think they're connected with FEMA, from what I've heard over.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dennis? Well, Dennis, I know you told me you were going to be on autopilot because it's very early there in California.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for, you did a great job. Thank you very much for where you go.
I'm glad to do it. If anybody does have any questions, just go and look up my email address on qrz.com and you can email me, any follow-up questions that you have.
Sounds great, sir. We're going to take about a 5-minute break here, and then you're welcome to hang out, but we're going to have our
Yeah, I'll
business.
listen in. That's okay. I'm wide awake at the moment.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, let's take a really quick, we need to get started right at 11. We got several things we need to talk about. That way we can get folks out for the, so, all right, let's take a quick break.